Great, and we're live. Go ahead, Angelo. Thank you.
Yeah, hello. Welcome to the City of Salem's Human Rights Commission. I'm the chair, Angelo, resident of Ward 2, and my pronouns are he, him, his. And we'll just do introductions, and then I'll pass it to Troy Carrico.
Hi, I'm Tricarico. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. I'm a resident of Ward 2, and I will pass it to Oni.
Hi, I am Oni Marchbanks. I'm a Ward 6, and my pronouns are she and hers. Thank you.
Great, let's see. Mike, do you want to go next? David, do you want to go next?
Sure. My name is David Reinhold. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm a resident of Polk County. And I'll pass it off to Krista.
Hi, I'm Krista. I go by the pronoun she, her, and I live in Ward 4. I guess I will go next to
I wonder if maybe we've had a technical difficulty. I'll go ahead and jump in. Alex, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Alex Das, resident of Ward 2, and I will pass it on to his mic there.
I had to jump out and jump in. I had a technical difficulty. I'm Mike Waters. I'm a resident of Ward 7. My pronouns are they, them. And I'll pass it to, well, I froze.
Great, Deb, do you want to introduce yourself? Deb Aguilar?
Sure, I'm Debbie Aguilar. I'm a lieutenant with Salem Police Department, and I am the liaison between the Police Department and the Human Rights Commission. And I don't think Savannah, I don't think she's gone yet.
Hi, I'm Savannah. I live in Ward 3, and my pronouns are she, her.
Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And everyone, I want to give Savannah a special welcome. She has applied to serve on the Human Rights Commission, so we're excited to have her as a guest tonight. And let's see, Bob, would you want to introduce the team that you have tonight just briefly?
Sure. Good night. Good evening, everybody. My name is Robert Haas. I'm the project manager with Hill & Hines, and we're working on the Salem Community Policing Performance Audit. And we're really excited about having your perspective and hearing from your viewpoints and starting our foundational process of the audit. So you're actually the first group we'll be talking with. And what I'd like to do is introduce my colleagues. Ricky, are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm Ricky Goaty, and I'm part of the team and very glad to be here with all of you. And we're going to be looking at a lot of different focuses while we're there. And just to give you an idea of what I'm going to be looking at personally with some of the officer wellness and safety issues, recruitment, hiring, background, investigation, and retention. Also youth engagement programs, and then homeless, unsheltered that I'm sharing with Bob. And I'll pass it on to Brian.
Well, good evening, everyone. Brian Kaufman, and I'm actually your neighbor to the southeast. I'm a resident of Sublimity, a lifelong resident of Staten and Sublimity, with the exception of a few years in Salem, in East and West Salem, and have worked in Polk County most of my, well, in fact, all of my 30-year career in public safety and law enforcement. Some of the areas I think I'll be contributing with, and we're all going to overlap together, is some of the assessment and evaluation pieces, and really going to focus on the communication efforts between the department and some of the different aspects of the community, certainly, and of the city of Salem as well within the internal and external operations. And happy to be a part of the team.
Thank you, very good. I see a couple of other folks here that haven't, oh, Commissioner Seong, Rita, do you want to say hi real quick?
Hi, I am sorry for being late. I was kind of a little bit distracted, and not feeling too good, but I decided to come here anyway because the work that we do at the commission is important. I'm a resident of Ward 8.
Thanks for being here. And then we have someone on the phone. Would you mind saying hi?
Yes, hi, this is Renee. I am a resident of Ward 8, and my pronouns are she, her. I had to call in, sorry.
No problem. Thanks, Renee. I think that concludes the introductions. And Angela, I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, Gretchen, do you know if you have any public comments?
We do not.
Okay. Looks like we can move on to the consent calendar, and I believe we have to approve September's and this month's, or August and September.
You're
Which
right.
ones do we have to do?
Well, we have the notes from both September and October to approve this evening, because we were just a little shy of quorum in October. So you have 2 sets of minutes to approve, and if you like, you can take them all in one block or take them separately.
Okay. And I think the easiest way to do this is, if anybody's ready to go ahead and do a motion so we can approve the agenda and the minutes for both October and September.
Krista, I make a motion.
Okay. Anybody second?
This is Alex. I'll second.
Okay. Everybody. Wait. Yeah. Let's vote. Aye.
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 All right. Any opposed? All right. Approve. They're approved. Hey, we missed one regular meeting, and I'm all over the place today. All right. We can move on to the listening session, Community Policing Performance Audit.
Yeah, thank you so much for making time on the agenda tonight. As you heard from the brief intros, Bob and the team are here. City Council made the decision, as I think you remember from previous updates, to conduct a performance audit related to Salem Police Department. And so the audit team is with us this evening and had requested time to talk with you and hear your ideas and thoughts. And so we are looking forward to hearing the commissioner perspectives. I will turn it over to Bob and ask him to provide kind of an overview of what's involved in the audit and kind of the scope and the activities that are planned, and then to take it from here and hope everybody participates and engages. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gretchen. So the scope of the work that we've been charged with in terms of providing the community policing performance audit is primarily and principally to assess the Salem Police Department and its community policing initiatives and efforts and its outreach to the community, and compare that against best practices across the country. Also embedded in the scope of work is understanding special populations, understanding special need populations, and also what's that interaction look like between the Salem Police Department and those different populations that it serves across the entire community. Clearly, you bring a unique perspective that we want to hear. And you, like I said before, you are the first group that we're speaking with, and both Ricky and I are kind of focused in the area that you all represent in the commission. So we're really anxious to hear from you. And Brian or Ricky, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I think you covered it pretty well.
Nope, and I echo those sentiments as well, Bob. I think that's very well put.
So Angela, I don't know if you want to kind of do a round robin or round table in terms of just speaking with each of the commission members give initial perspectives. And I also want to give you an opportunity to ask any questions or anything that that's not clear about the audit, or any other background you'd like to see. I know that Oni and Gretchen and Deb have been really helpful in terms of organizing our meeting. In fact, they've got us a pretty packed schedule next week. So we're going to be packing lunches and trying to cover as much ground as we possibly can next week. We do plan another trip the beginning of December, and we'll be doing a lot of virtual interviews between then and now and the beginning of the year. And then we're scheduled with the steering committee to present a final report to the City Council during its May 16th working group meeting.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think it's a good idea if any commissioner has a question, we could start there and then just make our way around.
I'm wondering if Angelo's freezing up, I might pick on Oni a moment. Oni, do you have any introductory remarks to share with the commission or anything as a member of our steering committee? Or I might turn it to you and see if there's anything you'd like to say.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Gretchen. So, not right off, so I'm here to observe and see what comes up. So I know what I have, but I'm also engaged in a few other groups. So I was going to kind of observe and then provide input as it comes up. But initially, no, I don't. I'm just trying to see where the commission's at. I haven't been here in a while, so I was trying to gauge where the commission was at in their engagement with the community and the things that maybe the complaints or what the atmosphere is like in the community, and are they connected to that? Are they hearing what the community is saying? So I'm gonna observe at first and see if the commission has any input first.
So Gretchen, if I could help, maybe I just phrase a couple opening questions that might be helpful to start the conversation. So one of the questions we'd want to know is, where do you see areas where the Salem Police Department are doing particularly well, addressing various different communities within the city? Where are there places that you think they could be doing better, or gaps? And some recommendation you may have that we should take into consideration with respect to the work that we're doing as part of the audit.
So maybe I'll just offer to call on folks. I'm worried Angelo might be frozen. I'll pick on you, David. What do you think? Any comments on that?
Not at the moment. I don't have any comments.
Thank you. Tricarico, how about you?
Wow. Okay. Where do I begin? So I think the police are made up of some people who probably, for the most part, have their hearts in the right place. I think that there are some people who genuinely want to serve the community and do what's best for the community. I think a lot of them are seriously lacking education. I think a lot of them are seriously lacking genuine involvement in the community. I think that because of a lot of the things that are being said, they're probably feeling a community who do not feel safe interacting with the police. I also know that in particular, there's been a very clear and documented bias towards groups who are involved with social justice, where the police are declaring riots, the police are using excessive force, and alternatively, when there are groups who are involved in social justice, and I say that with quotation marks because they're not about social justice, they're about fascism. They are self-identified Proud Boys and 3%ers. The police often do nothing when those groups are around. In fact, this last weekend, We have video evidence of those groups harassing people driving in front of the Capitol, stopping their cars, hitting the cars, physically blocking the cars, and the police stood by and did nothing. And that's just one example of the many documented on-camera cases where the police have either done nothing or shown favoritism towards groups who are known for hate and violence and racism, while simultaneously over-policing groups who are there to protect, sometimes just to play music. So what is the police doing well and what is the police improving on? I don't know how to answer that. There are so many issues as evidenced by the things that we've seen documented and reported that I don't know where to begin. And I am deeply concerned about this. I want to help. I want to work with people, but I'm also really sick and tired of seeing my friends get hurt and the police doing nothing about it.
Let's see, Krista, you're showing next in my space. Any comments that you'd want to make?
Yes, my internet connection is terrible, so I'm going to try to, bear with me if you can. There's a lot of things that I noticed, but one thing in particular that I noticed was the disability awareness and training for the police. I think that some of the police, they have a good understanding of how to handle situations with different disabilities involved, but still there's not a standard of practice for working with various disabilities, whether it be mental health, people who are deaf, hard of hearing, different disabilities. I wanted to see more training. I know that it's an issue for all of the police agencies, not just Salem, but that is something that I want to see addressed.
Mike, you're showing next on my screen. Anything you want to share?
Yeah, I unfortunately missed a lot of the introductory remarks. You might have seen me float in and out of the frame a couple of times. I'm having a couple of technical challenges tonight. So I unfortunately didn't hear a lot of your introductory remarks about the audit itself, but what I'm most curious about is how much of the audit is focused on internal versus external issues. And in particular, I think we have some really significant external issues with regards to recent events with the police, kind of ever since the Black Lives Matter protest began this summer. We've seen significant issues on social media and in regular media where things that have happened have really been very challenging for me as a community member. I think the concern is, and I think Tricarico pretty much put it out, the concern is that there's not enough being done to police, known white supremacist groups that are coming into our city armed, hanging out in our areas, and certainly they have a right to carry their guns legally, but I'm much more frightened when I see an armed white supremacist walking around the park than I am maybe some of the protesters that really haven't really seemed to instigate any violence that I've seen. So when I think about the audit and your work ahead, what I think is there's a lot of opportunity for the police department to really repair their relationships with the communities. There's a lot of opportunity for the police department to repair their relationship with the Black community and the queer community and the social justice community that is active and thriving here in Salem. And I would be concerned about an audit maybe going a little bit too deep in the weeds into sort of all of the the various machinations of what's going on internally, because to me as a community member, it's all about the relationship between the department and the community that I feel is fractured right now.
Thank you. Rita, do you want to offer any answers to the question?
I do, but like what Mike had said, I was in and out in the very early part of this meeting, so I only caught bits and pieces. Let me see what the name of the gentleman is. Mr. Haas, if you would kind of give me a few sentences on what you're looking for in this, then that will actually help me frame my answers a lot better.
So I think Mike touched upon some important points. The audit is designed to look at both the internal and external operations of the police department as it relates to community policing efforts, and really trying to identify where there are opportunities for improvement, where there are opportunities for the police to start to build relationships where they're either very sensitive or don't exist, and where are those communities that feel like they don't have a voice in terms of being able to express how they would like to see police services.
Thank you. That's very, very helpful. So here's my spiel on this. And I am very, very happy that we are having this conversation now, because I have been very concerned about the situation in Salem for quite a while now. We are in a much different world compared to last year, compared to 2 years ago, 3 years ago, even 5 years ago. The question that I have is our Salem police actually in a ready state to deal with our new society? And our new society includes a very, very fragmented population in terms of ideology and where they stand on quite a number of things. And emotions are really, really high. So the situation that we are faced with now, that all of us are faced with now, is new to us. The old way of policing may be good in the old days, but it may not be adequate now. So my question is, to what extent have the police department actually updated their skill sets so that they are ready to deal with what we are facing as a society and be able to provide the services to all citizens and residents within Salem fairly and equitably? The recent weekend's events concerned me a lot. And I am still trying to get to the bottom of what is what about that incident. And I believe we'll be talking about this today, Gretchen, where I want to find out whether there is equal policing for both parties that were there at the Capitol. What I'm hearing is that it's not equal. And that, for me, as a Human Rights Commissioner and as a resident of Salem, is very, very unacceptable and very wrong. And so if it is unequal treatment that we are seeing, what is the cause of that unequal treatment? If we do not hear from the police department as to why it happened the way it did, residents, people like me, we're going to make up stories. We're going to make up stories that the police favor one group over the other. And for me, as a Human Rights Commissioner and as a resident of this city, that is highly unacceptable, because that is a very slippery slope. As a woman of color and as an immigrant, I want to know that when I step out there, whoever I'm interacting with, if somebody in the public do me some wrong, I want to know that the police will protect me equally compared to how they would protect some other people, some other residents who's not an immigrant, who's not a person of color. Are we getting that kind of thinking happening within the police department? I am not sure. And I would like to know more about where the police department is in terms of how they have evolved over the last 5 years, and also what they plan to do going forward, because the world has changed, the world is continuing to change, and we are faced with new challenges just about every day. So moving away a little bit from the protests and the treatment of protesters by the police department. Even in my very, very small community, Ward 8, we are seeing, or rather, well, I do not have the data, but tapping into the neighborhood network, I am seeing a lot of my neighbors showing a lot of concern about the increase in crime, the increase of people kind of like prowling around and looking through the windows, things being stolen and things like that. And that, in my mind, is a direct result of what we went through in 2020, where people are badly economically impacted by the pandemic. So what I would like to see is, what are the plans for dealing with the needs of the community, which may be very different from a year ago, and how they're going to deal with it, and how the police is going to, one, look at repairing, if there's anything that needs repairing, relationship between the police and the community, so that they will come across as being fair and equitable to every resident within the community, every organization within the community. And two, going forward, what are the avenues for dialogue?
Thank you. Angelo, do you have any comments to the question?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not sure if anybody has said this because I cut out, but I think I want to look how accountability works in the department, because this is my opinion, but there's a reason why police keep doing what they're doing, because I feel like they're not held accountable by the department, by whoever's in charge, and that's why they feel like they can keep repeating the same action. And I just want to know, how they're held accountable, if they're held accountable. I think that's the better question, if they're held accountable, because a slap in the wrist is not going to cut it in these moments. So I want to know that. And I also want to know, when I'm not an expert in audits, but I want to know, when this audit is completed, who's in charge of, fixing the department? Is it just going to be, the city, the police? How are we going to know that they're actually going to improve because of this audit? I think that's my two main points.
Thank you. Alex, do you have anything for the question?
Yes, so I would echo what Rita said. I think there's a lot of fear for the police in communities of color. I could relate to everything that Rita said. There are a lot of communities of color that fear even stepping out because they feel like they're not going to be treated the same way when it comes to the police, whether it's at events at the Capitol, or whether it's even simple things like parking tickets or traffic lights or anything like that. There's a huge concern with communities of color. And also, speaking to Angelo's point about accountability, I'm curious about, after the audit, what happens? Like, are we going to communicate the results of it? How are we going to do that? And again, what are the next steps after the audit? And how is the police department going to be held accountable to kind of addressing whatever they find through the audit?
Thank you. Renee, do you have anything to add to the question or to answer the question?
Yes. So I'm in my car, so I hope it's not too noisy, background noise. So I don't want to repeat anything that anyone else has said. I think there are quite a few concerns, but I think there are some bright spots. And I know it's been more challenging because of COVID, but I know that the police do some things to engage with the community on a more, like, to build those relationships. I know in my ward, I don't know if they've done this since COVID, but they used to have coffee with the cop, where you could go and interact with police officers in a more like personal environment and kind of start to build those relationships. I haven't been to one, but I have heard good things about those interactions. I know through social media, I've seen some of the campaigns that the Salem Police has done to increase awareness, or to say, hey, we're doing this kind of patrol, or this is what we're focusing on this month or this week. So I feel like there are some things that they're doing, and I think that what we're hearing is that the community wants more. They want more engagement from the police on, like, to build those relationships that we've talked about. And like, for me, some of the more profound moments that I've seen are when we see police developing relationships with the community, when a police officer stops at kids playing basketball and plays with them and kind of creates that environment where we understand what the purpose of the police is, and that they're here to protect us and to serve the community. And with a lot of what's happened this year, there's a lot of concerns that, you know, the negative aspects are seen more broadly in social media than maybe they have before. I'm, you know, as a minority, I have felt some of those fears of the police as well. I've seen that in my community as well. And so I think it really is about developing those relationships. And I know the police department is doing a lot to work on this, so it may come down to promoting what they're doing more so that we know, because we know that the police department has policies, they have procedures, they have training, but we don't always know what that is. We don't know when that's updated or what they're doing in light of recent situations. And a lot of times we only see the negative in social media or in the news, and so hearing more of those bright, positive, like, what are the positive things they're doing? Let's hear more of that, and let's see them do more of that. So I agree with what a lot of other people said, but that's what I would add to the conversation.
Robert, I think that circles through each of the members of the Human Rights Commission.
Gretchen, I'd like to say something now. Thank you. Thank you. So when I say the term police, of course I'm not talking about the whole, everybody as a whole. Certain people who are employed by the police department. They police Black and brown communities differently. We do not feel supported by the police entities in our communities. We would rather try to work it out within our communities and call the police because of what we have learned and what we've witnessed, how they think of who we are, what they think if we're dangerous, if we're not, you know, and what we know is that there's laws that have been written that police us differently, that create bias, you know, driving while Black, all those things. So those things are real things, and there's data to support that. What we would like to see is some action, stop allowing certain groups, the armed groups, to be in our community and threatening and vandalizing and breaking the law, and the police do nothing. But then other groups who are yelling and screaming unarmed are being policed totally differently and violently, I would say, by the same police in our city, our great city of Salem. I was in a conversation once, and I heard it said, you know, let's defund the police. And I said, no, let's restructure the way policing is supposed to be. Because we, the people, we hire them, we pay them, right? That's the myth that I'm being told. But there's an investment that needs to be made of how police view others. until you start with that inherently message that you have about other groups, and you start to dismantle that and disrupt that and start to change that mindset, then every time they have that interaction with us, they're going to go to the default of who they think they are without really knowing who we are. I'm not interested in having coffee with a cop, but I'm so interested in seeing some real change of how they police us. I have had experiences in the community of being stopped, my son of being stopped and told that his car stood out, and so I think that there's a lot of, it's internal. There's some internal things that need to happen. And then the external work will show. Once you start with the internal, the policies and procedures, you can have those in place. But if you never hold them accountable to uphold those policies and procedures, they keep running rampant. Don't explain our experience away. We're telling you what we're living. We tell the police what we're living, and then a higher up will come up and say, that didn't happen. That's not what you've seen, although the world's seen it. And then an authoritative figure will come and say, that's not what you've seen. And we know what we see, what we saw. Stop pretending like everyone is treated equal. Stop pretending like there's not a favor for these other groups, because that's how I feel, that they're favored. And all we're asking in these protests and these rallies is for equity and equality. We're out here crying and screaming and yelling because we are asking for something. And until you get in those rooms, until you get and ask us, what are we asking for? And not just hear what we're asking for, but then to try to work towards implementing those changes so that we can feel safe in our own community. In my own home, I have a right to safety. And I don't feel that in the Salem community. I don't tell me that. I asked a cop about the national unrest. He said, well, that doesn't happen in Salem. That won't happen in Salem. Well, guess what? It happened in Salem. It happened in Salem. And I don't want the phone call of anyone else being murdered because of the violence that's not being attended to, that's not being addressed. All I'm asking for, and all my community is asking for, is for equity and equality. And we'll stay out there. We'll keep doing what we're doing. We're in a different time. We're in a different time, worldwide.
Thank you, Robert. I think that's each member of the commission. I'm curious how you'd like to proceed in the discussion next. Lot of big statements and a lot of strong feelings. And
so Gretchen, may I add to the conversation? Hearing what Angelo had said and hearing what Oni had said on the issue of accountability. When we see a situation where the presence of the police is on bicycles when they are in the area where the Proud Boys are at, talking about this weekend, and when the police are in riot gear in the area where the social justice people are at, the accountability for me is who made that decision? Because the police on the ground did not decide by themselves, oh, the ones on bicycle, you're going to police this crowd. You guys in the right gear, you're going to go over that. Who made the decision for it to be policed that way when the two different groups are there? And what is the basis for their decision? Is it some policy they have in place where certain groups are deemed to be less dangerous and some groups are deemed to be more dangerous? And how do they decide that? I would say, in my estimation, that people who are highly, highly emotional, and we are all very emotional in this present day, People who are highly emotional with guns, for me, are the most scary crowd. But yet we had the police in bicycles for that crowd. And the other crowd where I believe there was some Native American groups there as well, that one is the one where you have heavy police presence. So for me, when we talk about accountability, it doesn't matter whether somebody in the police department come out and say, no, we were fair, or yeah, we were unfair, but I would like to know how they actually made that decision. Because if they are allowed to make the decision now, what is there to say that if there's another situation where there are two different groups of protesters, that unfair policing will not happen again?
Thank you. Lieutenant Aguilar, I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you a question. I don't know if two things are running through my mind as I hear the questions that Rita and some others have said, and part of it might relate to a general process or policy about how decisions are made for staffing. And however, I'm hearing a specific question about the Capitol and which types of teams were at which locations, and that might be something that maybe we should write up and give to you to go back and take a look at. So I was wondering if this is answerable in the general, or if this is a specific question that you'd like to take back and then maybe come back to us about.
Sure. So I can tell you that generally, there were two groups that were involved, policing groups that were involved this weekend. There was Oregon State Police, and then there was Salem Police Department. We were working in coordination, but the Oregon State Police has the responsibility to maintain the Capitol Mall grounds. So that includes the Capitol building, the steps, and then what they call, I think it's Wilson Park, which is kind of down by directly across from the Capitol. So that is OSP grounds, and then Salem was there in the area as well. So I guess if that kind of explains how we were set up, so to speak. There were the two groups, we were working together, but the jurisdictions are a little bit different in that the priority for the OSP, for Oregon State Police, is the Capitol Mall area. For Salem, it's anywhere outside of that area. So downtown area, or anything that happens to go east or west of the Capitol. You'd asked about who makes the decision. Generally in those cases, there's an incident commander. So we always have what's called an op plan, an operation plan, where we look at what kind of, what do we think is going to happen? What areas are we looking at as far as where people are going to be gathering? And then we give have kind of a detailed, not a detailed, but a plan on if this happens, then this is something that we're going to respond to. So most operation plans have our priorities, which are priority of life and priority of property. So protection of life and protection of property. I can tell you that this last weekend, our priority was, because we had significant intelligence that there was a group of individuals who were from outside of the area, who were in Salem and specifically gathered at the Pringle Park gathering, who had the intention of going downtown and destroying property. And our specific objective goal was that was not going to happen. That group was not going to go downtown and cause destruction. So those are some of the things that we think about. So we have a structure. We have an incident commander who's in a command post. But ultimately, we have lieutenants who are on the ground out with the troops, the officers who do make the decisions, because those incidents are very fluid. We don't know what's going to happen. So we have to have people who are there with the officers to look at what do we see is going on and how best can we respond to make sure that our priorities, our objectives are met, which is, protection of life and protection of property. So I don't know if that kind of helps clarify a little bit. Rita, I don't know, did I kind of answer your question about that? Kind of how the flow goes?
Kind of a little bit.
Sorry, you had asked about uniforms, right? Like, why are some on bikes? Why are some in different uniforms?
Right, yeah.
Okay, so so we had, I think OSP, I know OSP had individuals, officers on bikes, and I think Salem did as well. The bikes are used because they're pretty mobile, so they're faster than on foot, but they're also better than a car because you can get through a park pretty quickly. And then they also use, if you probably watched the live feeds or if you were there, they can also use those bikes. If you have two groups that are starting to come together and starting to fight, you can use that bike to form a barrier and try to make sure that the two groups stay separated. And when we have a situation where we have two groups that have opposing ideology, and we know that there might be the potential that some conflict is going to occur, we do have people who are officers who are set aside and are kind of out of the way, but are in gear that if something were to happen, they can come in and they're in protective gear where they can take bottles, they can take bricks better than if they were in just a regular uniform. So they've got helmets that protect their head from head injuries, and they've got a little bit of extra padding. So those are the folks that that come in if there's a potential that they're going to be taking those kind of that kind of potential weapons. So that's why you see two different groups. So the group that came in with what you would call riot gear, with the more protection and the helmet, were the group that were not going to allow individuals to get to the downtown area because of that specific intelligence that we had, that there was a likelihood that if that were to happen, that damage would be caused.
Debbie, can you share a little bit more about that source? Because I had a lot of really good sources and they were saying quite the opposite. So I'm curious what you heard, because I was actually watching the people planning the event make the plans, because they were all emailing and I was part of that email chain. And based on the information you gave me, the group that was at the Capitol that identify as racists were actually a much more credible threat, again, based on what they've done and, having guns. So I'm really interested how that, the group of people asking for all the votes to be counted were deemed the threat. And that would be a great question for the auditors. How does the Salem Police Department assess threats? Because I'm seeing what feels like a bias to me, and I would want to know how those decisions are made and who is ensuring that biases aren't coming into play when those decisions are made.
Yeah, and I can't give you where the specific intelligence came from, because that's protected information. But what I can say is that the information that we got was that this, like I said, it was an outside group that was coming in to insert themselves in what was a very peaceful event at Pringle Park. And so the individuals that were coming in from outside were our concern. And in fact, we had our police deputy chief, and I believe even our chief was reaching out to organizers, I believe through the Black Lives Matter, to let them know that we got this information, that we were concerned about the likelihood that this group was going to come down and cause some issues.
I saw Mike had his hand up, and I also want to circle back to Robert before too long, because I want to make sure we're getting to the objectives of the conversation tonight, with the audit input specifically. Thank you so much. Mike, did you want to jump in?
My hand was up temporarily, but my question was very similar to Tricarico's. The only other thing I wanted to mention was I was a little concerned, Lieutenant Aguilar, and you know, of course, thank you for all that you do and for serving on the commission and for the work. But I was a little bit concerned about your use of the word troops when referring to officers, and I was really pleased that you corrected yourself. So thank you for correcting yourself, because I think that's the concern, is that there's a militarization of the police when dealing with specific groups, and yet we have armed people who are at the Capitol, and there was no militarization needed in that instance. So
Yeah,
but I appreciate you correcting yourself, and thank you.
Thank you. And it's just a unfortunate turn of phrase, because we do understand that we're not that policing, especially in today's age, is not militaristic. You know, it is much more about building those relationships as opposed to being a paramilitary organization, and that we're working very hard to try to get away from that. But it still raises its head every once in a while when I use one of those terms. So I apologize.
Let's just call a thing a thing. The police are not comfortable. The police are very comfortable when they stand with the Proud Boys and they tell them how to get out of harm's way, and they spend time with them. They're very comfortable with that. That's what we see. We have video of, you know, policemen telling the Proud Boys where to go so that they're safe, so that they don't get hurt. I wish there was more of a neutral stance with our police officers, to where since you guys say that, you know, everybody, it's free speech and the First Amendment and all that stuff, and the Proud Boys want to kill me, this Black woman. That's how I feel. I feel very unsafe, and I also feel safe when the people who are supposed to protect me and I'm supposed to call for protection are standing with them. They're not neutral.
One of the
Actually, I have another question though, Lieutenant Aguilar, and thank you so much for clarifying this. So what is the role of the police when the protest is happening and there are actual incidents of violence against other individuals within the protest itself? And I believe there are videos that shows that there are certain individuals who were passing by the proper crowd at the Capitol, and they were targeted. There was a car that was kind of beaten up on. The press was actually targeted as well. And I believe there was a guy who was just walking by, and he was targeted as well.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the role of the police when that kind of thing actually happens, when there is obviously an altercation?
Sure. Yeah. And so that would be the area where I don't have the specific information, because my understanding is that there were arrests made, that Oregon State Police made arrests, because yes, the expectation is that if there's a victim of a crime, that be handled. Now, I will tell you, if you're in a situation where it's tense, and there may be something where you got to handle maybe a physical confrontation first before you can get an officer over to deal with the victim of a crime. So it may not look like anything is happening right then. It doesn't mean that something wasn't done. And so my understanding from OSP is that there were arrests made I don't know specifically which cases. I don't know what the charges were and what particular incidents those arrests were made on. And then, as always, I mean, we encourage people that if they go to one of those and they were the victim of a crime, that let us know, because there's certainly enough video going on between live feed and that are recorded, that certainly doesn't mean that we can't go back and look at it. But my understanding to this date, we've had one person get a hold of us and say they were a victim that we're investigating. And again, it's not a big hurdle, but part of it is happening on OSP's jurisdiction and part of it is on ours. So just once we determine who has the jurisdiction to investigate, then we can certainly go and do an investigation. So so I don't know if that necessarily answers your question, hopefully a little bit.
Yeah, it provides more information on the issue that I'm concerned about. What I'm hearing is that those who were targeted and who were hurt in some way have the right to file a complaint, but that is after the whole thing is over. What about there and then when the protest is happening and you've got people from both sides there and there is violence against individuals there? Do we let the police let that happen? Because I mean, in the situation, in the video that I have seen with the car just driving past and surrounded by the Proud Boys, and some members were actually beating on the car itself. I find it hard to believe that that wasn't something that the police on the ground didn't see. But I do not see the presence coming over to that car and saying that is not acceptable.
Yeah, I can't speak to that specific incident. What I can say is that if we see that there's a particular individual who's creating a lot of those issues, our plan always is to go in and get that person out, because a lot of times if you take that one person out, it can solve a lot of problems. And that may be a case where you see that somebody's committing crimes and we can go in and get that person out. You have a lot of other people, and so you hate to take an officer out of the situation and do a long-term or a complex investigation right there, where it takes them out of the lineup, so to speak. So you've got an officer who's now not available to go and help if there are other disturbances. So that's why I say that, and oftentimes maybe officers just don't see it. I mean, there's a lot going on. It's very loud. Officers have masks on, so they may not, it may seem like they're seeing something and they may just not see it. And again, I can't say that that's what was happening during the rally on Saturday. That's just me trying to throw out some possibilities as to what happened.
I want to jump in, thank you, and circle back to Robert and the questions for the auditing process. I appreciate and know that the work in large gatherings, protests, rallies is a part of what you're looking at. I want to check in. Are we on track with what you're looking for, or are there other questions that you'd like to ask the group? I don't mean to stop the conversation, but just to pause and check in.
I've been furiously taking notes. I've been trying to keep up with everybody to make sure I captured everything. There are a number of issues that were identified during this conversation, which I think really point us into some directions that we need to do further investigation. As Gretchen indicated, one specific area is crowd control and how the police respond to protests and demonstrations, and how they make sure that they're protecting everybody's rights. So that's an area that specifically one of our team members is looking at. In fact, it's Bob Bomer, who's not on the call with us, but that's his expertise. And so he's going to be looking at their operational plans and really assess how they respond to those kinds of situations and what took place with the rally over the weekend. But there's a whole bunch of conversation around engagement, equity, fairness, wanting more engagement with the police, but in non-adversarial, non-controversial ways. And that has to be heartening to the police, knowing that there is a desire on the part of the community to want to have a relationship, but it has to be a relationship that the community defines for the police. And I think we heard a lot of that during the course of the conversation, and that there has to be a better way of communicating to the community, because there's a lot of questions. Why do the police do this? Why are the police not doing that? So there's an opportunity to share a lot of information. The lieutenant really kind of explained a lot of things that were going on behind the scenes, but because not everybody has access to the police, they wouldn't be able to get that information. And that shouldn't be the case. There should be a way to make sure that information is being shared on a regular basis. So I can tell you, I've got 5 pages of notes. And so I've got a number of issues that I know our team members are going to be looking at specifically, and also making sure that we do try to address it in our reports as we report back to the community. Brian, Enrique, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I would just say that the one thing I've also taken furious notes, and but what has struck me is the passion that is very evident in this group and for the police department. And even though you're clearly talking about things that aren't going right, there's also some things that are going right. But the very fact you're talking about it, and I have to give the lieutenant a lot of credit for answering the questions to the best of her ability, kind of be put on the hot seat a little bit. But the very fact that you're all here with this kind of passion and wanting to do something, because yes, you have very valid issues, but I think it's also pretty clear that everybody wants to see this communication and transparency and accountability happen as a result of part of what we're doing, but moving forward, because it's your community. And it's heartening to me to see this kind of engagement. And I would just add that. That's kind of some of my reflections, along with the furious notes I've taken.
Yeah, and I'll just add maybe one, and I as well took notes. And I think the nice part, or when you look at this with the stories, because everyone has their own stories to tell and their own experiences. And we always say perceptions are realities, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. But I think, a lot tonight, what I think I heard, at least, and I know we're going to continue to hear, were a lot of the symptoms that you're seeing, the events, the specific incidents. But really, I'm hoping what we get, you can look at operational plans, you can look at logistics, but you want to add the community's perspective that supports those plans, that supports that training, to support what happens beyond the technical aspects of the operations for the police department. And so I think, we're really these stories will help put context to the underlying root causes and conditions that are contributing, whether it's homelessness or unsheltered or the specific events that you identified. Really, that's the event, but you want to get to what we hope we can help the department with and the community with, is looking at those underlying root causes and conditions that lead up to that and don't conclude with that, but then continue on after that. And I did, if I could just ask one question, because it kind of hit me, I think relevant to the conversation. It came from Tricarico early on when you said, I think, I don't know what to do, or we're not sure, which way to go. And I want to make sure, just to follow up, if I could ask you a question, do you think there's a sense, and really to Oni as well, a sense of hopelessness where people have just given up because they're either so frustrated or they couldn't get an outcome that was, I think, acceptable for individuals or for a community? Do you think that some extent that's occurring or has occurred as a result of some of the things that have happened?
Yes. One, because it's a pattern, right? This isn't an isolated incident of one mistake. We have repeatedly seen video evidence of the police favoring one group over the other, over and over and over and over again. And when the police do respond to our questions, they're often very invalidating, and people have touched on that. I am very concerned that the audit will result in either there are no problems or there's some really minor problems and we're going to do like a couple trainings to fix it. I don't want to see that happen. I think the only way we're going to address this is really, really big change. And I know that's scary for a lot of people, but I also know that policing at its core was a racist institution. I mean, I hope you understand the history of policing. I hope that you understand the history of Oregon. If you do not, and you do not take that into consideration, I will be very concerned about the results of this audit. And I also know that this isn't new because policing started this way. And I get worried because sometimes when I talk to police who I think genuinely are trying, like I said, who genuinely have their heart in the right place, they're still accidentally letting things slip out that are problematic and still trying to deny that there are problems. And I just got to tell you, there are problems, right? Okay. I've had problems. I've said racist things. I've done racist things. I'm a white person. It's happened. It's going to keep happening. It's not going to stop, and it's not going to stop hurting people until we acknowledge that and we look at the deep systemic issues that are involved. And you know who makes up a system? People. So the people in that system need to actually do something and stop telling us there isn't a problem, and take it seriously and be a part of the solution, because I don't want to see the police villainized. I don't want to see them treated poorly. I want to see them a part of our community. And maybe that means taking on a completely different role in our community. And that would be fantastic. But until we actually see some changes in the patterns, yes, there is a very big feeling of hopelessness for me there.
Okay, and I appreciate that. And I actually wrote down 3, and then I'll turn it back over. I don't want to really get too far off on this, but I wrote, because we work with a lot of underserved and underrepresented populations that discount the historical, the generational, and the personal trauma of a particular group, or and that's just part of the discussion, especially in policing. And so I just wanted to, kind of your perspective, and I appreciate you sharing that. And we'll see how we progress through. I think we're going to certainly take that into consideration. And Bob, I don't want to speak, but rest assured, I think we'll do diligence in the areas you're hoping we do.
I find the subject matter, I just from a staff perspective, really quickly, the challenge of assessment is a really difficult one. The Human Rights Commission works with people who are experiencing bias and discrimination, and often works closely with Salem Police Department, because some things are incidents that are in kind of our sphere, and some things are criminal in nature, which become the sphere of the police department. So we often work together to sort out possible remedies. It's difficult because trying to sort from a report and experience, a lived experience here, there are so many, so to come to broad conclusions are always difficult. I know that's not very clear. I think my only point is just the challenge of assessment is difficult. But I'm wondering where else to go in this conversation this evening and what would be helpful. And I'll call on Commissioner Waters and then go back to the audit team.
I think it's an interesting thing that you raised, Gretchen, and what I've been thinking about a lot since we did our survey earlier this year, which said that 72% of Salem residents experience discrimination. What I've been thinking about is how relatively few of those stories we actually hear at the commission or at the police. And I think it's because they're not reported. And I think they're not reported because of structural racism, because of systemic problems and in our community. And I don't propose to have any great solution for that, other than I think that it's so important that we listen to our community and what they're saying to us when they do get brave enough to speak, because I think so often those stories never make their way to this commission. And that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned since being on this commission, is that actually relatively few of the stories ever make their way to us and ever get any justice for the individual who's experiencing it. And it makes me deeply sad. It makes me also very angry, because it shouldn't be this way. If somebody's experiencing discrimination, they should be able to find someone in their community who can help them, and trust that there's someone in their community who will help them. But the trust just isn't there. So that's what I got.
Well, audit team, is there other things you wanted to share this evening or other questions you'd like to ask of the commission?
The disadvantage we have right now, Gretchen, is the very first time we're starting to dive into the city of Salem. And as I indicated at the beginning, that this is really, this first week alone is just foundational. It's really learning as much about the city, different perspectives, make sure that we listen to as many people, both within the police department and across the city, so that we can capture all the things that we're hearing. And what we're listening for are broad sweeping general themes that resonate over and over again, so that we can start to think about what's that grand plan that needs to take place to start to address many of the concerns that we're hearing about, and make sure that there is a way for the police to play a role in that, and understanding that there is a broader network that really has to be in concert with one another and collaborating with one another for this to be effective.
Thank you. And I think this commission was formed in the 1960s and remains today an organization that stands ready to be a part of that solution. So as everybody's exploring these broader themes, and as everyone is interacting with people in the community who are experiencing bias, I want to remind everybody that the commission is here to work both proactively on broader themes and issues, whether it's systemic racism or oppression or specific issues around discrimination, but also quite specifically when there's a person who is reporting or sharing about bias or discrimination, we're here to help and to work with individuals to try to identify solutions and resolve those issues. So we're looking for how to help.
Can I just put in one last 2 cents worth? And it is this: for me, for very obvious reasons, diversity is very, very important. And I am in a situation where, because of my skin color, I may be a target because COVID has been associated with the Chinese. So if putting myself into a scenario where I get targeted and I get called names because I'm obviously Asian, and I get called names in association with COVID, and I look at reporting to law enforcement, my view of law enforcement right now is that it is very, very white. I don't get a sense that the Salem police is very diversified. I could be wrong, but on the issue of perception is real. That this is my perception of the police department, that it is very white. So if I am experiencing some form of racism where it is a white person calling me names because I'm Asian, I would be hesitant to even go to the police and report that, because I'll be going into a place where it is staffed by people who have done wrong to me in that particular instance. So my emphasis is I would love to see more diversity, or even messaging that the police department is working seriously on making them a lot more diversified.
So I just would add to you, Rita, because I really appreciate that point, because that's one of the areas that I'm specifically going to be looking at in this audit. And I'm going to be talking to the lieutenant about recruiting, because you're very right about the makeup of the police department. And that's one of the issues we're going to look at, is how do we make the Salem Police Department be representative of the community? And that includes gender, race. I mean, they're lacking in a lot of the areas, but is it where that's part of what we're going to be looking at is where's the problem? And then one of the challenges that I would put, especially on this commission, because all of you are in the absolute best spots to be able to help get people to become police officers that are representative of our community. And how do we work with you as police departments to get the people? So those are the issues that we're looking at. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, because I don't believe Salem Police Department's not atypical in not necessarily reflecting their community across the United States as police departments. And it's something that everybody needs to look at and figure out ways to solve that issue. So I appreciate it.
I also want to add that if and when we do recruit diversity to the police department, how will we support those new recruits so that they stay? Because we can open the gates wide open and make all sorts of great promises to keep those applicants here. But if they get into a police department where they aren't supported and treated fairly, they're not going to stay. So please look at that as well.
Point.
Yes. I had my oldest son was a Marion County policeman, city of Salem, I believe. He made it. He was a policeman, and he was a young guy. And we have quite opposing views, by the way. He really thinks highly of the police department, and he has still friends, that people he considers friends from when he was a policeman. And in my opinion, I don't believe he was supported while he was a police officer for this institution in any way. He resigned after 2 years. So again, to what Tricarico was saying, I don't believe he was supported. I was the one who got the late night phone calls about how he was engaging and managing with the incidents that were happening, without going into detail, because he could only share so much. But he wasn't supported at all. He resigned after 2 years, and he resigned from something that he really was passionate about, he really loved to do. And about a year later, after he did some self-care, he reapplied, same guy, same situation, and they gave the department, Chief Jerry Moore, and the department, whoever was there, gave him the most shallowest reason why they weren't going to rehire him. And the reason they gave him, it didn't apply the first time, but it applied this time. I can't make this stuff up. You just can't make it up about what's really going on internally and behind what we don't see. And until there's some internal work done for the individuals and as the institution, as a collective, then the way you show up in the community and the way what we think about you as a community is not going to change. Because if you change something internally, the way you show up, we're going to see the difference. We're going to feel the difference. We're going to know that you care.
Well, I want to do a time check. Angelo, are you comfortable with where we are on the agenda? How do you want to proceed?
Yeah, I think this is very important. So if the commission wants to, keep doing this, I'm okay with that.
Other questions from the audit team? Other remarks, comments from the commission?
Gretchen, I just want to make sure we don't get too far ahead of ourselves, because we are still very early in the process. But a lot of what we've heard resonates with all of us in terms of our past experiences and where we worked before, and we've been working across the country. So, it's real. And as I think Brian and Ricky said, perceptions are reality. We believe that. And so that's that person's perceptions are reality. And therefore, there's an obligation to address those issues to their satisfaction as best they possibly can. So, this is all being taken into account. There are a lot of issues. I think Tricarico talked about the institutional racism in policing and the foundation of policing. We're well aware of that. We understand that there's a faulty foundation that's supporting policing across the country, American policing. And your calls, I think Rita was the one that said there has to be systemic change. I think Oni said the same thing. So, those are things that we're taking into account as we do our audit across the way, and making sure that some of those faulty foundations aren't still persisting or existing or thriving in the police department.
I have something to say again. I'm sorry. I tend to get talkative after a while. So I understand that the audit is just at the very, very start of the work. I am also having a sense that there is an urgency for change, because we are living in a society that is very, very divided right now. And we are living in a society that is going through a lot of change. So, and the more we continue with the status quo, the more we continue with how we are policing, the worse it will be for the relationship between the police and the community. Because we are already experiencing certain things, we are already having certain perceptions of the police. And whatever is going on at grassroots level is going to continue. There will still be protests. And if the police shows up at those protests the way that they have shown up on Saturday, it is going to worsen the perception. It is going to worsen the relationship. So the urgency for me is there, as in, while the audit is happening, what changes are we making now in order for us to have faith in our police?
Another thing I want to bring to light, I think we all know this, but it needs to be said. A lot of people, when they hear things like defund police or restructure police, they get really scared because they have this image of like gangs of criminals running around and doing all this stuff, and they're scared. And you know what? That's already happening. That is the reality. We've heard from people in this call not feeling safe. I know that at Bush Park, there was people, Proud Boys, going around looking for people to rough up. I live really close to there. I don't feel safe going there with my signature rainbow glasses anymore because I'm afraid I might get beat up. And I'm white, and I'm really lucky that I get to make that choice. But a lot of the people on this call don't get to make that choice. So we really need to think radically about what could policing look like, because it's genuine when I say that I don't want to see people villainized. That will not solve the problem. We really, really need to rethink the structure. And this audit could give us a really amazing opportunity to do some incredible things. So I really want people to understand that, yeah, I'm passionate about this. And yeah, I'm pretty angry about a lot of stuff, but it's because I care. And it's because I care about the police too. I don't want to see them being in the news again and again and again, because obviously that lesson isn't sticking. I want to see them not villainized. I want to see them doing work that doesn't leave them traumatized and feeling unsupported. And let's find other options to do those things. So while we're focusing on the negative, I also want to think about what could we do? What are the possibilities that could come out of this that would help the police and the community?
Krista had her hand up.
One second. Sorry. Interpreter wants set up clear so I can see Krista. Go ahead. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who came to this conversation. It's a lot of deep conversation and it's really, really critical. I'm so glad that everyone who is here, and I'm hoping that this is the start of more conversation. Just as everyone said, you know, change needs to happen. So thank you everyone for being here and for the team for hearing us. All right, well, maybe that's the conclusion point. Robert, is there anything else you'd like to add? Any comments about the timeline or anything before we say goodbye?
No, I think, you know, that there is a sense of urgency, as Rita indicated. I think, you know, given the short timeline and just how dense our work is between now and that final report, really demonstrates the fact that there is that feeling of urgency and that things have to happen much quicker and that we can't afford just to sit and wait. So, you know, I think you'll see your comments, you'll see your sentiments, you'll see your concerns in the report. And hopefully you'll see what are the solutions or potential solutions to those concerns and issues and a pathway forward in terms of addressing many of the things that you see as injustices or you see as really inequities that are taking place across the city. I do believe this is an exciting time for the police. I think there is an opportunity for some meaningful and significant change in policing. And as I said before, we can't continue just to kind of overlay on top of existing policing practices and expect monumental changes.
Thank you. Well, Angelo, I think it's back to you.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to thank the audit team for coming here and listening to us. And I look forward to seeing where this goes next. To bias crime update.
So bias crime update, there was only one between the time we met last and today. It happened on October 26th, and it was covered pretty heavily in the media, where it occurred in a northeast part of Salem, where a Black male was shot and killed by a white male, and the white male was a suspect, was subsequently charged with a murder in the second degree, bias crime in the first degree, and unlawful use of a weapon. So that case right now is with our district attorney's office going through the court process. And that was the only bias crime or bias incident that I had this last month.
Thank you, Lieutenant Gretchen. Any complaints or concerns?
I had one in the month of October, and that one actually related to clarification. A person reported concern that their rights were being violated by having a mask mandate in public spaces and wanted to discuss the human rights around mask rules. And so I provided information and referral to that person. And then I've got another situation that came in November that relates to question about mistreatment due to race in a place of public accommodation that I'm working on right now.
Thank you, Gretchen. I think we can move on to task force and project updates, awareness. Mike?
Yeah, there was an issue this last month that prevented our awareness group from meeting. It had to do with city agendas not being able to be uploaded to the website. So we had to cancel, unfortunately, the meeting. For awareness, we decided to go ahead and just skip the meeting and meet again next month. So there will be an awareness update at that time. And it would is the next one LGBTQIA?
The next one's Cora today, since we have you on here already.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that for me, Angelo? The interpreter couldn't hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I just said if Mike can go do the LGBTQIA Intersectional Rights Task Force, since we already have him here. So go ahead, Mike.
Sure. So the LGBTQIA plus intersectional task force was also unable to meet on our appointed date. However, we are going to meet on this upcoming Monday to finish planning for Trans Day of Remembrance. Trans Day of Remembrance is being held on Friday, November 20th. There's information in a flyer that Gretchen provided to all of you. It'll be viewable on YouTube. The participants who are reading names will be in on a Zoom link, but the public will be able to view it on YouTube. So definitely would love for everybody to spend a few minutes hearing about the violence that has been, or rather remembering the people who were lost to transgender related violence across the world. We'll have, in addition to the reading of names, we'll have some remarks as well. So it should be hopefully a powerful evening where we remember our trans siblings who have been lost.
Thank you, Mike. We have next core response, and that's myself. I think we need to talk about this one because we haven't been able to do any trainings because I feel myself and other people feel like Zoom isn't the right environment to do serious trainings. And so I was wondering if we had two options: find other trainings that would be doable over Zoom, or just pause the core response for now. Now I wanted to get some feedback on that.
What kind of trainings? You must have cut out. What kind of trainings are you talking about? Any kind of trainings, or you said training? So I was asking specifically what kind of trainings.
Hey, Gretchen, you want to take this one? Because sorry, Oni, I'm trying to you put me on the spot. I'm trying to say the right thing. So Gretchen, go ahead.
Oh, there's no wrong answer at all, but I'm happy to. I was starting to jump in because I couldn't tell if you were freezing up a little bit. A while back, some members of our core response team task force put together a list of topics that they felt were helpful in preparing human rights commissioners to receive complaints of discrimination and to support people who'd experienced discrimination. And so that list varies, but it ranges from oppression, which is a topic that we were anticipating tackling in August, but there developed some concern about our trainer recognized not being sure this was a format they'd like to work in. And then it also gets into just understanding the system for supporting victims of crime, like understanding how that works if something moves all the way through the court process, like the crime that happened in October, for example. The elements of victimology, things like you might remember, we've done training in vicarious trauma. We've done training in understanding the elements of a conversation that can be really helpful and create connection and help a person to be comfortable to share their experience, versus the elements of conversation that can be off-putting and shut a person down. Microaggressions is a part of it. Becoming trauma-informed is something that we've trained upon before. There's a number of topics that Outline has identified and that commissioners have had training in over the years that help prepare a person for that moment when you sit down and you're sitting with someone who's dealt with bias and discrimination. So it's the idea of having a core response is having a core set of skills and abilities to be able to move forward and support a person who's experienced discrimination. So I guess that's kind of a long-winded answer. I'm sorry.
I appreciate that. I wanted to speak to so I am a diversity and equity consultant, and I provide trainings and workshops via Zoom. And I wanted to speak to via Zoom because we are humans, and by nature we crave connection and a sense of belonging, right? And so when we're asked to shift and do something different, speaking to the pandemic that happened and we couldn't meet in person, and since that was my small business, I had to make that shift. And not that it was comfortable or not that it was something that I really wanted to do, but it had to happen that way. And so I can testify to that Zoom is effective. Online trainings are effective. You get to pick and choose what you share. It's just the way that these trainings are facilitated. So I have been present in very effective online trainings. Just my experience.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've been in some stuff with Oni and we've done some hard stuff, some important stuff. So I'm always all for it, but I do know that, Zoom fatigue is real and a lot of us are probably really tired of being in our homes on our computers. But I do think the training that we're doing is important. And, maybe we can choose something lighter if that's possible for our first one, because we don't know how long we're going to be in this environment. And I'd hate to keep pushing it out when we don't know.
Yeah, I think our last one was in June.
I was just going to echo that Oni's trainings are excellent.
Wait, if you like, maybe I can email Oni and, oh, sorry, Krista, go ahead.
Thanks. I wanted to add, yes, I agree. I've been in this program for a while now, and now going through everything with COVID, and really Oni is one of the best. I really loved everything about the discussion. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there as well.
Great. Maybe I can follow back up with Oni and Angelo and see about some ideas for a next training. How does that sound?
Yeah, great. 2 thumbs up.
All right. I stand incorrected. I thought people felt bad about doing trainings, but now I'm excited to see what we can do in the future. So thank you, Oni, for correcting me and saying that trainings are effective, because I had no idea. I haven't been in any Zoom training. So thank you. And we can move on to, let's see, where are we? We are in Equity Lenses, Chapter 97, Tricarico.
Okay, so we also had a little bit of a pause on that, but we have another meeting scheduled coming up. I cannot remember the last time I updated, so I apologize if I repeat myself. Dr. Brown has been super helpful in helping us frame the equity lens in a way that everyone can understand and use it, because he has experience with this. He proposed adding a glossary of terms, which has been really helpful. And then in conjunction with Gretchen, we're also going to be looking at what diversity and inclusion training the council will be doing so that our lens is in alignment with that. There's a lot of approaches to DEI work and to equity lenses, and we want to make sure we aren't confusing anyone or saying something contradictory. So we are going to try to work with the folks doing those trainings so that the equity lens is a continuation of that work. And the really great news is it kind of sounds like the city is already looking at equity lenses as a possible tool. So our timing is really great, and they're already at least on board with the idea of having one. So they're going to be hopefully willing to work with us on defining that, and we'll have some really great resources for them. So far so good. Again, any of y'all are welcome to join us. I've learned a lot, in just exploring this. It's been really cool. So thank you.
Thank you, Tricarico. Krista, Unsheltered Neighbors.
Krista, do you want me to take?
Yes, because I don't really have anything new on my end. So Gretchen, if you would like to go ahead and take over for me, that would be great.
I would be happy to. And I do appreciate Krista joining me at the coordinated care meeting a bit back. This project got stalled with me partly due to workload and partly due to my own sense of the capacity of our community. Now that one of my roles at the city is to serve as a liaison on homelessness issues, I've gotten to work quite a bit on the topic. And you might remember where we were last with this is we wanted to deliver a survey to the nonprofit providers, and we developed our survey, and Krista and I brought it to the community group that would be able to receive the survey. And then I got some questions about, well, how would it be used, and came back and clarified that. And then I paused because I guess I wanted to kind of further deepen that answer. And I was also worried that they all seemed to have so much on their plate. So I was kind of pausing. Now, I think it's a great time to go ahead and deliver the survey. The city council on Monday night just made a decision to allocate about $730,000 to expand sheltering options in Salem. And so that's going to give some new dollars to work with. And it seems really well timed and would help answer the question that I think the community had about, well, how would you use the money? Because I'd be able to say, well, we're making decisions kind of quickly on sheltering and want to make sure we have this input and have this information. So I think it's a good time now. And in some ways, I regret not releasing it last month anyway. I've just been struck by how much everybody's doing to stand up the warming network and the Safe Park network and everything going on. But anyway, that's where we are on that. And I've also been having some preliminary conversations with the legal department on the what it looks like from a legal standpoint about amending Chapter 97. So I have work with that team right now that's going to need to come back once the analysis is done to this group. So in both cases, it's been kind of stuck with me, but I haven't been not working on it, but it's been slow. So I want to acknowledge that. But that concludes my update, and I welcome questions.
I have a question, Gretchen.
Yeah.
So just to see if I heard you correctly, so you were working on a piece of what you said was that you're working on your $730,000 that will go to nonprofits to help unsheltered individuals, or did I totally miss it?
No, you're correct, but it's actually, there's actually a larger amount of money, which I would say that's how I would describe it, because it's there to help people who are unsheltered. But within that budget, there's about $733,000 that it's available to expand sheltering options specifically. So the idea is to identify additional locations where people who are unsheltered are able to be. So it's a more specific allocation. Overnight, warming, day, all of those types of shelters are clearly needed. And so this is an allocation to try to help expand the shelter resources in Salem.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah. A lot of my attention has been there. I've been working on a assessment of sort of the capacity of our nonprofit community in terms of what can be done and some other things.
All right, thank you, Gretchen. And last item, youth outreach. Nathan isn't here. He's been busy. He has school and all that. And I don't have anything for youth outreach. I think just I want to say I'm not speaking, I'm speaking for myself. I think it's important that we look at our Salem Kaiser School Board because there's some things happening. I think we really need to pay attention to that board. Some things that I don't agree with. So I am hoping that people, pay more attention to that board because I think it's important. And I think that's all I got to say about that right now. And staff updates, Gretchen?
I do have one, which actually is reminiscent of a request that the Awareness Task Force had last month. So I want to remind you of Commissioner Waters, Chair Waters of the Awareness Task Force had made the suggestion to see if anybody wants to create videos, short little videos that we can use. And Mike had shared an example of a template. My staff update relates to that because I heard from the planners of the traditional annual Salem Speaks Up event in Salem. And they asked me to check in with you all and see if there's commissioners that would be interested in recording brief videos that might be shareable on Facebook on their Salem Speaks Up. So it occurred to me that one video that we might be able to offer is the one that our volunteer in the community, Ryan, already created for us, which is a way to share about the resource that's available of the commission. So I thought that might be one I could share with the Salem Speaks Up folks and see if that would fit what they have in mind. But I wanted to ask if there's members of the commission that would be interested in recording a short video. I don't have a lot of parameters or details yet of what they have in mind, but it sounded very similar to what Mike talked about last month with the Awareness Task Force, a brief video that shares kind of who you are, who we are, what this resource is, your thoughts around wanting to hear from people who've experienced discrimination. So if you're interested, I think either Mike or I would love to hear about your interest and be able to move towards taping. Thank you. I should also mention I had sent out the opportunity for the what are they called now? Capital Community Media, formerly CCTV. I just had one respondent on that, and then the date got away from me. So I want to apologize on that one sneaking up on me. But I just had one respondent, so I don't know if we would have been able to do it. But or maybe we still can. I don't know. Oni, if you want, I can see if they want to. I don't know. It's tough to do when it's like already done.
You mean miss an opportunity to be on TV?
I know. Maybe I should
gonna
email you and them and see.
I was gonna ask if they could replay our one from last year. It was me and Tricarico and Bella and who was the fourth person? Do you remember? Was it Angelo or Nathan?
I think it was Nathan.
It was Nathan.
It was Nathan.
Yeah.
It was really good. They should just replay it.
I can
and
ask
they should
him.
do one with Oni too.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, Mike, I wasn't in that one. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's see what we can pull off real quick here. All right, very good. But let me know if you want to make a video for Salem Speaks Up. I think that'll be a fairly quick timeline because you might remember Salem Speaks Up is traditionally on December 10th every year in conjunction with the International Human Rights Day. So that's probably a quick timeline. And that concludes my staff updates.
Thank you, Gretchen. Community calendar. How about for that?
anyone has any events to share. Tricarico.
Yeah, so I just got a request for us to be at an event. I think it's called End Silence or End White Silence. I'm trying to look at it really quick. End Silence Against Hate Groups and Police Brutality. So it is Saturday the 21st from 4 to 6. It's at Pringle City Park. The request has been for one of us to speak and to table at the event. So I plan on being there. I can be there, represent myself. We can, make a statement. I don't remember what was in our statement that we made for events in June, but we may be able to use that statement. As I wanted to see if anyone else was interested in attending or speaking at that event, or if they want the HRC at that event. I'm not going to just say yes without consulting with everyone.
I would be happy to table, and I have all of the tabling stuff. It's still at my house.
Awesome, thank you.
And this is the interpreter. When was that event again?
It was Saturday, November 21st from 4 to 6. And it's at Pringle City Park, not the Capitol. So don't get that confused.
I can send out the statement that was largely Oni's words. We were touched by your statement that you'd shared, and then largely worked from that. You might remember back in the spring. I can send that out as a consideration for you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tricarico. And then member remarks and announcements. If anybody has anything to say or that wants to announce before we wrap up the meeting.
I guess I just wanted to throw something out there since we only have one more meeting this year. Am I in the right month? November, December, yeah. Normally at the end of the year, we do like a potluck or something. So I don't know if we want to get creative on our own, think of what maybe we can do at the next meeting to connect with one another, whether that's sharing what you ate for dinner or showing us your holiday decorations, or I don't know what, but somehow having a couple minutes to kind of connect with one another like we normally do in December through our potluck, but doing it virtually. So I don't know if anyone has any ideas, if we want to share those with Gretchen and then, or what, but I just wanted to throw that out there to kind of prepare for our last meeting of 2020. And as we start to think about 2021 and moving forward from this year.
Could we maybe wear a funny hat? Just one idea.
Could we maybe wear a funny hat?
I'm open to suggestions, so.
Awesome. Well, don't hesitate to send them my way, and I can compile them and then maybe circle back with the chair and vice chair and Renee too, and make a plan. The meeting will come up on you a little quicker than normal since we delayed the November meeting due to the election. We meet next on Tuesday, December 1st. And we do have a new member, but she was unable to be with us tonight. Abigail Allen has joined the team, and so will likely be with us at the next meeting.
Oh, also, Gretchen, I had a question for you. Yeah, so I've been part of this commission for, I think, 2-3 years now. And the first year I was here, we did the officer elections in December, and then last year we did them in January. Do we have a plan for that? What's the plan for it this year?
That's true. We haven't talked about that yet. I think that's up to you. I can quickly see what the bylaws say, because they'll potentially clarify which month. If you'd like to hold for just a moment and I can peek at our bylaws, unless anyone just happens to have their bylaws right handy.
It feels like that was yesterday that we were voting or discussing. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right, that's an annual election for chair and vice chair, and you can be reelected for another term or not, as the commission would like. All right, I got the document open. Now I just need to look for the election part. Thanks for pausing with me. It simply says annually. So you have the flexibility to interpret annually. That could be December, January would be the zone, because then you're about a year out.
Do we have any preference of doing it January or December?
Well, I would just say, like, the next meeting we have is my last meeting, and I know there's a lot of movement within the commission. So I would think maybe pushing it out just because we have so many people coming and going. So the new people can kind of get in here, maybe learn more about what those roles are. If maybe one of them might be interested. But I think what happened last year was it kind of snuck up on us. So since we're talking about this now, whatever we can do maybe in December to have those final conversations, knowing January we're making the decision, or so it doesn't sneak up as much.
Exceptions, I think we should do the elections in January. Oh, and also, if anybody has, I think it's time for people to start thinking if they have interest in serving, or if, Krista, you want to get reelected. I think it's time to think about that as well. All right, so
my last comment. I think
nobody else
happened
has any. Oh, go ahead.
I just have one more comment. I think what happened last year is the chair and the vice chair shared about their kind of like their year, what it was like, what they had to do, just a little more information about their role as the chair and the vice chair. So maybe at the next meeting, you all could think about sharing that so that the new people, at least, I think it'd be beneficial to everyone, but the new people would know what those roles entailed for you, like what your experience was the last year.
Especially because you may have encountered those
I agree with that. We can. Yeah, I think it's a good idea, and yeah, I didn't expect to be, chairing meetings via Zoom. So it's definitely been an interesting year. Okay, so if nobody else has anything to say, I think this meeting is adjourned, and I hope everybody has a good night.